Part 7, Recovering Moral and Religious Truth. Most of Babbitt's writings on ethics deal with higher will in its humanistic form, as a power that creates and enhances civilization. But he also gives considerable attention to what he considers the specifically religious form of the same will. Civilized life is itself a demanding discipline, beyond the character of many people. But in rare individuals, the exercise of the higher will may be carried even further, quote, until it amounts to a turning away from the desires of natural man altogether, the dying of the world of the Christian. The dying to the world of the Christian. This is the dead souls concept that I'm already gone, man. I'm not even of this world anymore. While civilization is an effort to make the best of the world by humanizing it, the heart of religion is the spirit of otherworldliness as represented by Jesus, Buddha, and others who aspire to holiness. The spirit of civilization, though calling for a perfection of its own, is less exalted than, or at least different in orientation from, the spirit of turning the other cheek or taking no thought for the morrow. Both humanism and religion are forms of ascent from the naturalistic level and have much in common. But Babbitt insists that by virtue of their respective predominant emphases, they have separate domains. In ordinary usage, religion has a less specialized meaning than in Babbitt's writings. The term is commonly used for any doctrine that asserts the existence of a transcendent source of goodness. The meaning of the word religion is not confined to the aspiration to otherworldliness. Religion usually includes the more worldly, higher concerns that Babbitt calls humanistic. Babbitt's thought has often been judged, especially in the United States, according to its conformity to or deviation from traditional Christianity. Many Christians, including the two converts, T.S. Eliot and Alan Tate, have criticized him for dealing with ethical issues without relying on the inherited religious dogmas and creeds. Some have accused him of playing down the importance of religion because, like the tradition of natural law, he also attributes a certain moral autonomy to the humanistic level of life. In general, these reactions miss the point of Babbitt's approach to the ethical and religious questions. Babbitt wants to help save as much as can be saved of the ethical and religious core of the Western tradition, and to revitalize Western culture. To be successful, he argues, such efforts must face squarely the deeper challenges of modernity, including the requirement that claims about human life must be supported by experiential evidence. Traditionalists, who consider it sufficient to reaffirm inherited dogmas and creeds, are not up to the task of defending civilization. Babbitt considers it short-sighted and intellectually feeble for modern proponents of ethical and religious truth to state their case in the doctrinal terms that will be rejected out of hand, not just by moral nihilists and militant atheists, but by honest skeptics who are looking for persuasive evidence. In formulating the idea of a higher will, Babbitt is not trying to talk Christians out of their beliefs. He is addressing all of those in the modern world who are not willing to accept ethical and religious truth on the authority of inherited dogmas. To these skeptics, he argues not that traditional Western beliefs are wrong, but that ethics and religion do not stand or fall with church authority. They have an experiential foundation. Human life now and throughout the centuries presents a wealth of concrete evidence regarding the nature of ethical and religious reality. Even if traditional beliefs are to be given no credence, this historical evidence remains. Honest modern seekers after truth who claim to respect experience should be directed to this material and encouraged to scrutinize it in depth. Babbitt wants to, quote, meet those who profess to be positivist. He wants to, quote, meet those who profess to be positive and critical on their own ground, and to undertake to show them that in essential respects they have not been positive and critical enough. What Christians refer to in their accustomed language as, quote, the will of God, grace or the Holy Spirit, etc., is not without an observable basis in concrete experience. Taking careful account of this evidence, Babbitt adopts the terminology of his own, the higher will, the inner check, the, quote, again, higher immediacy, etc. He tries to avoid too close an association with traditional language that presupposes the validity of Christian revelation and of dogmas that cannot be substantiated in experience. Complaints that Babbitt does not embrace particular theology ignore the difference between revelation and philosophic scientific observation, between devotional literature and scholarship. Although it may be impossible to draw a sharp and definitive distinction between these genres, special criteria of knowledge obtain for the scholar. Particularly in the view of intellectual circumstances of the modern world, Babbitt considers it unwise to frame ethical and religious issues in such a way that thinkers who are not Christian believers or not Christians of particular denomination are automatically relegated into inferior status in philosophical discussions. While Babbitt dislikes ethical and religious ecumenism of the most common, sentimental, and abstract kind, he insists that there is a universal element in mankind's ethical and religious experience that can form the basis for a more genuinely ecumenical wisdom. Representatives of different faiths, and also some persons who do not consider themselves religious in the ordinary sense, can contribute to this core of insight. Religious dominations that claim a privileged insights beyond what can be verified in general human experience should not regard the careful exploration of the ethical and religious ground common to mankind as a threat to their own faith, but as a helpful partial elucidation of what they believe. Babbitt freely grants that theological dogmas may contain truth beyond what can be established critically on the basis of experience. For Babbitt, the best measure of religious or ethical commitment is not the fervency with which a person proclaims a particular creed or adheres to ceremonies and rites, but the degree to which the person brings forth the fruits of the Spirit in personal character. A wish to submit to an external religious authority can be actually a sign of ethically deficient and unstable temperament. People whose inner life is fraught with the ethical uncertainty and flux are often the same who crave an external certainty and order. Read Eric Vogel and learn more about that. The affinity of certain romantic converts for the church is that of a jellyfish for the rock. Seemingly pious submission to external authority may in fact indicate an escape from what is much more difficult, the actual improvement of self. Reverential words and gestures sometimes signify a purely aesthetical conversion that conceals ethical half-heartedness and chronic doubt. Professions of sinfulness can be a delicious enjoyment of what one feigns to deplore and an excuse to postpone the difficult reform of character. At the extreme, faith becomes viewed as everything and works as nothing. Peter Weyrich, a writer deeply influenced by Babbitt, says of the pious intolerance of some modern proponents of religious orthodoxy, T.S. Eliot among them, that it can be seen as an attempt by people who are deep down modern relativists and skeptics. It's an attempt by them to shout down that nagging inner voice of doubt. People who are more secure in their own character feel less need to submit to outer direction. What Babbitt questions is not the external authority in every form, but personal and doctrinal rigidity originating in neglect of genuine ethical effort. Babbitt offers the educated guess that Buddhism, with its non-dogmatic religiosity, and stresses on the primacy of willing has had many saints as Christianity and been less marred than Christianity by intolerance and fanaticism. Babbitt's writing on the higher will is intended to assist a modern, and if you really want to, if you really want to see, you know, a lot of folks say that, well, Buddhism and Christianity can get along, and sure they can, and C.S. Lewis does a wonderful job at the end of his book in The Abolition of Man of showing how all the great religions do have certain things in common. But if you want to see, you know, how Christianity is so much vastly superior in comparison to the nihilistic Buddhism. What I'm trying to think is that I think that's orthodoxy, in which Chesterton does it. It may be What is Wrong with the World, but you should read Chesterton. And any Buddhist delusion you might possibly have will be disintegrated, or perhaps we should say deconstructed. So anyhow, Babbitt's writing on the higher will is intended to assist a modern recovery of ethical and religious truth. By stressing the practical fruits of ethical action over abstract ethical theory, he hopes to promote a recovery that is free of dogmatism, as it is free of doubts about the reality of the universal good.